What is going on, everybody? A wild first round of the 2023 NFL draft is behind us. A truly wild draft. We say that a lot, but this one was different. A lot of reaches, a lot of really surprising picks. We're going to get into it here in this video. And let's just get started, man. A special shout out to everybody who joined us for the first night of the live stream. This is just the beginning. We've got some amazing players here available into day 2 and day 3, and I'm going to be live here on YouTube, so I'll continue to see you guys throughout the chat. If you did not join me, I'll see you guys tonight for round 2 of the draft after Joey Porter is selected by the Pittsburgh Steelers with the 32nd pick. But let's react to every single pick of the draft. I will be of the first round of the draft. I will be doing my, it is worth saying, I'll be doing my full grades of every pick once the draft is done, and it's going to be fun. Sometimes these first night reactions change based on how teams handle, especially like day 2 of the draft. Sometimes you can see the process a little bit more, and when we come back Sunday and Monday, these grades can change, but usually they don't. Usually, I've got a pretty strong understanding of if I like the pick or not, but let's get into it. And here we are. So starting off with Bryce Young with the number 1 pick. The second they traded up for him, at the end of February, I tweeted, even if you have to give up DJ Moore, it's still worth it to get a guy like Bryce Young, who I think is going to be a franchise changer, a guy that's going to step in and, be that top-ish tier franchise quarterback that's going to really change the vibe and ultimately how much playoff success the Panthers can have. So for me, I love the pick here. We've got 6, tiers of reactions here. We got absolute certified steal. Love it. Like it. Fine. I've got questions and hate it. So I do want to reserve the certified steal for the maybe 3 or 4 picks in this first round that were truly special. But for Bryce Young, I do love it. Move up, get your guy. Pretty self-explanatory. Okay, CJ Stroud going with the number 2 pick. I thought for a moment they were going to go with Will Anderson at number 2. And really, I'm going to kind of grade these 2 picks together and the process together. I thought it would have been interesting if they took Will Anderson and then kind of waited to see how the quarterback board played out. And maybe they should have played it a little bit more patiently. Maybe you would have been better off staying put at 12, going with Will Levis and, not having to give up your first round pick next year, the 33rd pick. They gave up a lot to get, quote unquote, their cake and eating it too. I still like the overall plan here. I was really excited about this as it happened live, and looking back on this, you get your star on the offensive side of the ball, you get your star on the defensive side of the ball. I especially love how Will Anderson is going to fit in this defense. You have DeMeco Ryans from Alabama stepping in, getting your pocket-pushing edge rusher from Alabama. To me, securing him while also getting a quarterback that clearly they feel very good about at number 2, I think you have to love this as well. Now, and that's kind of packaging the decision to do all of this together. Now, they gave up a lot. If they do happen to suck this year and they're sitting there with the first or the second pick and Caleb Williams is that dude, it's going to be really tough to move off of CJ Stroud, who you just spent the number 2 pick on. Not saying that's going to happen, but it is something that was potentially in the cards, was for this team to be bad enough to get, in my opinion, a potentially elite quarterback. I don't really see Stroud as that guy for a variety of reasons I've talked about when it comes to play extension and out of rhythm playmaking and stuff like that. But from the pocket, he's a very sound player. I compare him to Dak Prescott, and if you're getting Dak Prescott with the number 2 pick, you're really not going to complain. And then Will Anderson, pairing those things together, I love this from the Houston Texans. Even though you had to give up a lot, this team has been, as much as they had to give up, they've been through 3 times that, and it's time for them to be a real team again. And with D'Amico, C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson leading the charge, I can't really question the logic. Those are some really special football players and a great coach. Anthony Richardson at number 4. Again, I love it here. Let's see if I can slide these grades over a little bit for these longer names. But yeah, I was really curious to see which direction they were going to go between Richardson and Levis, and pretty crazy to see how far Levis ended up, ultimately falling here, still available in the second round. So in hindsight, that's just kind of crazy to think about. Like, I think they probably struggled with this decision a little bit. Maybe they didn't. But as far as Anthony Richardson is concerned, it's a really fun landing spot. You got Shane Steichen coming over from Philadelphia, doing all of the read option, the RPO stuff with Jalen Hurts in that offense. He's going to be able to do that with Anthony Richardson. I think from Chris Ballard's perspective, this is great because if he's on the hot seat, you're probably not going to let him go, at least until next year, because Richardson is viewed as a project, and you want to get probably a couple years before you make any kind of verdict on if Anthony Richardson is going to be great or not. But I don't say this, lightly, but he is literally the most physically gifted quarterback to ever enter the NFL, more than Michael Vick, more than John Elway, more than Josh Allen. A quarterback this size with his athleticism and his arm talent and even his release speed, it's insane, the ceiling that you could be talking about here with Anthony Richardson. So to me, this was kind of like one of the more shock value, like not that I was surprised by it, but once it happened, it was like, all right, let's go. Let's see how this thing plays out. And I'm really excited for Indianapolis's outlook here for these next couple of years. Then you get to Devon Witherspoon with the Seattle Seahawks, another pick that I love for them. And, over the last 5 years since I've been doing this, I stopped mocking Seattle to draft a corner in the first round because Seahawks fans would always come at me and say, they don't do this. This is not, their way. They want to draft big-bodied guys in the third, fourth round, the Tariq Woolens of the world, plug them into their cover 3 system, and they don't value that position that way. And I think this speaks volumes about the type of player that Devon Witherspoon is. They pass on a guy like Jalen Carter in this situation, a pass rusher like Tyree Wilson, and go with the corner. And he is one of the most fun evals out there. He is one of the stickiest corners I've ever watched. He pairs ridiculous reaction time mentally. He almost knows the play. Like when you watch him, it feels like he knows the play as he's covering these guys. He knows when those route breaks are coming, and he pairs it with incredible feet, great technique. He gives them something that Tariq Woolen doesn't, in a guy that can follow number 1 wide receivers around the field. Woolen is a very good player. I'm not trying to slight him, but if you have to cover Devontae Adams or Brandon Ayuk, which Seattle's really struggled with, great route runner, you have a guy that can do that and hang over the middle of the field in a way that Tariq Woolen he's up and down the sideline. He's fantastic, but let's face it, there was a lot of times where they felt like they could put him in man coverage and he just didn't hold up. So, and this is not an anti-Tariq Woolen thing. This is more about replacing Michael Jackson, which was necessary, a huge need. I love this decision for the Seattle Seahawks, and he was one of 3 blue chip prospects in this draft class: Will Anderson, Devon Witherspoon, and Bijan Robinson, who we're going to get to here. So then we got Paris Johnson. The Cardinals kind of moving all over the place here. They got into a tampering scandal because they felt apparently like Jonathan Gannon, they had to cheat to get him, which is just stupid because Jonathan Gannon wasn't even that good of a defensive coordinator / head coach candidate. But they're going to do a pick swap with Philadelphia as like a weird settlement, I guess. I don't know. I haven't really had time to read into it and see what the hell happened. But anyway, they're navigating all over the place. I love the haul they got for number 3. And then I love coming back up. And I kind of went on a rant during the stream. And I love this pick, by the way, Paris Johnson. I kind of went on a rant during the stream defending Kyler Murray. And I'm not going to do the whole rant again. I encourage you guys to go check that out. A lovely viewer went and did timestamps for every pick. So shout out to, I should give you your credit for the timestamps because that was Trayson. I should give you your credit for these timestamps. Had to pull them up here. But anyway, to get some pass protection for Kyler Murray, they've had Cliff Kingsbury and this Big 12 mentality coming through, getting receivers and linebackers, and like, what the hell are they doing? Paris Johnson to me is a underrated player in this draft class. I even said in my predictive mock draft, a kind of take of mine was look for Paris Johnson to go a little bit earlier than we've seen really throughout the draft process because he really is a special tackle with incredible upside. They're going to have to kind of sort through. They have like 3 left tackles right now with Josh Jones, who played well. They still have they still have Beachum, but what's his name at left tackle? The Florida guy. I can't think of his name right now. DJ Humphries. So like they're gonna have some position stuff to move around, and Paris Johnson said he would play guard if need be. So I just a great offensive lineman. His run blocking is so special. If he can just get a little bit better with his feet to cut off inside moves, he's really gonna be golden, man. I really love this pick for the Cardinals. Nothing here so far has screamed unbelievable steal, but really I think these teams in the top 6 made some really great decisions. All right, number 7 for the Raiders, this was more of a like it pick. So I really like the prospects of Tyree Wilson pairing with Max Crosby in the future, and I really like that Tyree Wilson is probably pretty much never going to have to be an alpha number 1 pass rusher, which he's a straight line bull rushing guy. I'm not going to say he can't be a true number 1. I never would have thought Max Crosby would have been able to as a 4th round pick, right? But the reality is he doesn't have to be that. He can be what my pro comp for him is, and that is Marcus Davenport, and be nasty opposite of Max Crosby. So like I get behind what they have in mind. I think you have a good mentor there with Chandler Jones opposite of him, or working in front of him, really. Max Crosby, a good mentor as well. So I don't really have any major issues with this pick, but a theme really throughout this video is going to be raising the Will Levis question, and him falling to the 2nd round. I mean, maybe he really is just a bust, but time will tell on that. I think he easily could have gone in this top 11 range for what he was as a prospect. And like if Justin Herbert can go in the top 6, I think Will Levis absolutely could go in the top 6 and or 7. I don't think that's crazy to say at all. And if Jimmy gets hurt and they're sitting there wondering what to do with the quarterback situation, I think it's something that like time will tell. But I also just don't think Tyree Wilson at 7 is like unbelievable value. He's my 15th player in this class. I think he's a really good pass rusher. And again, I really want to save these grades. I want to give you that green love it if I truly do love the pick. And I like this pick, but I'm not like swimming in excitement for it either. So we're going to go like it for Tyree Wilson. Bijan at 8. This is going to be another like it. And even just to give this a like it is going to be, I think, pretty contrary to what a lot of analysts say out there. I've been kind of pounding the table. This was I have a bell that I ring on the stream for when a take I had kind of resonates. And I've been saying, like, look, someone in the NFL is going to look at Bijan as a top 10 guy. In fact, I said this in my what I would do mock draft, in my predictive mock draft that came out on Wednesday. I had the Cardinals moving down to 11 and then taking Bijan Robinson. Obviously, the trade down with Tennessee wasn't there because they didn't want Will Levis. But, Arthur Smith is who he is. And the Falcons have shown who they are. They're going to stay put in the draft and take, regardless of positional value, they're going to take who they think is the best player available. And if they think Bijan Robinson is the best player available, they are damn right, because if you take position value out of it, he is the best player in this draft class. I really don't mind this pick. I am sad as an owner of Tyler Algier in my Dynasty League, but Bijan is going to be a monster. I think he's a candidate to rush for 1,800, 1,900 yards in his rookie season. They're going to lean into him. He's got the speed to hit outside zone. He can go counter, trap, backdoor, whatever. You can mix him in. You've got a mobile quarterback. This run game is going to be truly disgusting. And I think Bijan is the exception to the rule at the running back position. I don't go throwing around high-end Hall of Fame comps very often, but I did with Bijan Robinson, comparing him to LaDainian Tomlinson, and the best player in this draft class, the best grade I've ever given a college prospect since I've been doing this. So if you can get LaDainian Tomlinson with the 8th pick in the draft without having to move up to get him, it's pretty hard to argue with that. Now he has to be that player, but I feel very good that he can be that. All right. We need to pause. We need to breathe. How did the NFL let this happen? Jalen Carter to the Eagles. And what's crazy is this was just the beginning, because the Eagles also were the team that benefited from the Cardinals' malpractice of getting, the whatever happened. They get the tampering. Thank you. My wife chiming in. Shout out to Anna, who was amazing throughout the draft here on the first night. But anyway, the tampering charges, they end up getting the first pick in the 3rd round. And then they get Jalen Carter at 9, moving up with the Bears. You now have Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Hassan Reddick, frickin' Josh Sweat, Milton Williams is a good player, and they brought in Nolan Smith. This is going to terrorize the NFL. This is the classic Howie Roseman, how does he keep getting away with it, steal of the draft type of deal. So this was genuinely one of the most impressive picks. Now, I can't say that while completely walking back what I said pre-draft about his off-field character concerns. I think they are legit. I think if he went to, Chicago here at 9 or, maybe Arizona at 3, he needs the right leadership around him. He needs the right infrastructure with a team, with a culture that can keep him on the right track, keep him out of trouble, and keep him focused on football so he can continue to grow and get better at the next level. I think Philadelphia is a prime example of that situation. So this is a certified steal grade from me, and really the first one of the night. Then we got Darnell Wright to the Bears, and honestly, this was one that I had to question a little bit. I've got questions on this one. First of all, Peter Skoronski's sitting right there. Out of Northwestern, to me, a notably better prospect than Darnell Wright. I think from a pass protection standpoint, it's not even close. Honestly, from a run blocking perspective, I think if you are a gap power running offense, you could explain Darnell Wright with his people moving ability and his drive off the snap at 330 pounds. But for a wide zone blocking scheme, which Chicago is, I think Peter Skoronski is a better player. He lands his hands inside. He runs his feet better. He sustains blocks. It's actually a criticism I had pre-draft about Darnell Wright, is that in the run game, especially once he gets out into space, he's throwing his torso at guys. He's not latching and sustaining. And I really question the evaluation to pick him over Peter Skoronski. I question the scheme fit over a guy like Skoronski, or even a guy like Broderick Jones, who I think was a better player, better higher upside pick than Darnell Wright. I don't think it's the worst pick in the world. Darnell Wright's a good player. I think he was worthy of going somewhere in the top 20, more in the 16 to 20 range than 10. Given the players they passed up on, the fact that you moved out of the number 1 pick and you end up with Darnell Wright, who to me is like maybe should be like the 20th pick in the draft, I just don't know if this is the most exciting pick that the Bears could have made and the most impactful pick. I also don't think he's a great pass protector. I know he handled Will Anderson, who was lining up as an inside shade as a 4-eye for over half the game. But you watch a lot of his tape and, he's struggling to cut off inside moves. And I question the evaluation. We'll see how it plays out. I could be wrong about any of this stuff, and I acknowledge that. But I'm also someone that spends a lot of time with this, and I'm going to voice my opinion. I really think they made a mistake with this pick. Then we got Peter Skoronski at 11. And this is a love it pick. Now, similar to what I said about the Raiders, like I am curious to see how Will Levis works out, because the Raiders, the Titans, and let's just get out of the way, the Commanders, the Bucks, the Vikings, all these guys passed on Will Levis. And if he turns into a good player, I think you might look back on this like, yeah, we maybe got a good player here, but we kind of screwed up not taking the quarterback. So it's hard to know right now how that's going to play out, but all those teams have quarterback questions, and I do think Will Levis belonged in the first round here somewhere, and I'm really stunned none of these teams pulled the trigger. But for Skoronski, I can understand how they justified this. They still feel like they can win. I think people underrate the Titans quite a lot. I've seen them as like a projected bottom 5 team next year, and I don't really know where that comes from. I think the roster is in pretty solid shape, especially on the defensive side of the ball, for a team and a coach that has done nothing but prove people wrong. I mean, they had a nightmare season, ended up being led by Josh Dobbs off the practice squad, and they were playing in a Week 18 game to go to the playoffs. So, you bring in Andre Dillard, Peter Skoronski now. I think you're fixing that offensive lineup. Traylon Burks in year 2. Get our boy Phillips from UCLA healthy next year. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape to compete next year. So I do love this pick for Tennessee. But do they ultimately end up regretting this as a team that's probably not going to be picking in a situation where they could get a true first-round quarterback like Will Levis again? It's just something to keep on the back of your mind. All right, this one is wild. Jahmyr Gibbs to Detroit. This was the first one I was like, what are they doing? And the last 2 years, I have raved about the Lions. So if you're a new Lions fan and you think you're coming in here and you're like, oh, this guy's just a Lions hater, it's just not true. I mean, I've raved about their picks the last 2 years. Ever since Brad Holmes took over, I have applauded them as one of a team that everything they do seems to make sense. It compounds. They seem to be really building upon their moves and building a beautiful roster there. After they traded Jeff Okudah for a 5th-round pick and then made this move, moving down from 6 to take Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, you just signed David Montgomery to a 3-year, $18 million contract. You have a great offensive line in front of you. You still have DeAndre Swift, who's a little bit redundant with Jahmyr Gibbs. If this was Bijan Robinson, would love it. Jahmyr Gibbs is not Bijan Robinson. It's not even close. Gibbs is much closer to... I guess I can't think of a great... like maybe where Travis Etienne was. Good first-round back. Etienne went in the 25th pick. We're talking about a top 12 pick. We're talking about premium corners, pass rushers. I just don't understand this for a team that had a couple needs on defense, and even like a wide receiver here would make more sense to me than Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't get this pick. I think they made a critical mistake here with what was the 6th pick in the draft to essentially turn that into Jahmyr Gibbs. I think is a critical flaw for Brad Holmes. I think it would have been substantially better to move up to 3 and take Anthony Richardson. He's going to be a good player in like 2 years when David Montgomery gets cut. Right now, he's going to replace DeAndre Swift, I guess, as your scat back. I just don't see a massive... like, the other thing is, if you're not going to go for the quarterback, aren't you trying to like go for it now and like make the picks that are going to make you the best team right now to maybe scrape your way through this really bad NFC? Like, this isn't it. So to me, this is actually like, I'm sorry, Lions fans. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. I think this is one of the worst draft picks I can remember the last 5 years. I think he's going to be a productive player. And I know that staff sees Alvin Kamara in his game, but it's just too rich. It's way too rich. The opportunity cost is far too vast. All right. Green Bay at 13, and another situation where if I didn't like a Green Bay pick, I'd be the first person to tell you that. My picks, my grades on this team over the last 2 years have been very harsh. But I genuinely, I fluctuate between these two right now. Love it and like it. And this is one of those that whatever happens on day 2 is going to really impact this grade. If they come out day 2 and they roll out of there with a playmaker, or maybe one of these top tight ends, and then either a safety or a wide receiver, this is going to be a love it pick. I really believe in Lucas Van Ness. If they kind of fumble day 2 and end up with a backup running back and a fullback like they did in 2020, this is more in this range, right? So right now, based on how they went and got Christian Watson early second round last year, I think they're playing the board well. I think there's a depth of talent in the second round at wide receiver, and the tight ends are there in large part because Green Bay didn't kickstart the run on tight ends, making the same mistake they made last year where they kickstarted the run on linebacker, where they probably could have waited for the second round instead of taking Quay Walker at 22. Right now, I'm going to give it a love it. We'll see what they do day 2. This is the first pick that I think could really change based on how they play it. But I'm a Lucas Van Ness believer. I knew Green Bay was going to be targeting a freaky edge player with one of these top picks because it's what they value. This is essentially a cut and paste replica of when they took Rashawn Gary. Now, I think Gary was a better prospect. I think he was higher recruited, more productive player. Lucas Van Ness was a part of that Iowa program that, everyone says, oh, he didn't start. Well, that's what they do. They play their seniors. They've always done that. Lucas Van Ness, a super young player, but his raw power is very similar to what Rashawn Gary had coming out. And very similarly as well, where you don't look at it on paper and say that's an immediate need, but when they took Rashawn Gary, they had just signed the 2 Smith brothers, and look at what Rashawn Gary has turned into. You very well might have in 2 years 2 of the 3 or 4 best bull rushers in the league, and I can't think of any NFL teams that have basically the tackle talent to handle 2 Rashawn Garys. So down the road, this has the potential to be a game-wrecking force. And obviously you want to give Jordan Love his help now. The receivers in this class, like I've talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's a really good slot player. Do I have a massive difference between him and Josh Downs in the second? No, I really don't. I think there are deep threats. There are other receivers, guys like Michael Wilson, Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt. And I'm not the biggest Hyatt guy, but if you're getting him, maybe in the we'll see what they do. But there is a world where they can get their guy here. And Rashawn Gary, by the way, might not be ready to go right away, so they might need him early. But again, day 2 is going to be big for Green Bay. I'm going to keep it as a love it. Could change to more of a B or a C grade, depending on what they do here in day 2. And Gutekunst, that handled the Aaron Rodgers trade very well. I like this pick. He's earning some of my trust back after some horrible drafts the last few years. Broderick Jones, moving up for him. I do like this a lot. I'm going to give this a love it. You've already got 3 tackles off the board at this point. Broderick is very raw, but there's very few teams I'd rather put him with than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and his physical tools are spectacular. I think the Jets were raring up to take him, so to move up and get your guy, I really like it. And then the fact that they're sitting here and probably still going to get Joey Porter, it's honestly highway robbery. So I do love the pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they have a chance to have a spectacular franchise-altering draft if they take Joey Porter, as I think we all expect them to. Okay, Jets at 15. I'm sorry, but I hate it. I don't know if it's just Aaron Rodgers forces his general managers to make horrible first-round draft picks that are overdrafts, but to me, that's what Will McDonald is. How are you going to tell me you're going to take Will McDonald over Nolan Smith? If you want an undersized edge rusher, that guy's not Nolan Smith for you. I just cannot get behind that evaluation from Joe Douglas and the staff there. I don't know necessarily who else, like wide receiver, not a huge need, corner, not a huge need. That's kind of where the value is here. Or just, take a tackle, take Anton Harrison. I don't get this. He is going to be, for the Jets, the 4th piece of a rotation. I mean, they still have Bryce Huff. Are we really that sure that Will McDonald is going to be a better player than Bryce Huff, that in that role that they just drafted him to play, that Will McDonald's going to overtake Bryce Huff, that was one of the most efficient pass rushing specialists in the league? You have Jermaine Johnson, who you took in the first round last year, that struggled to get on the field because this group was so deep. This one was horrible. I really can't get behind this. Even a guy like Myles Murphy, to me, take an interior player, take a Brian Brzee, a Kalijah Kancey, where they have an easier path to playing time. I can't explain this one. I'm sorry, Jets fans. And I'm a Jets fan now that Rodgers is over there, but rough. Okay, this pick, this is going to be a long video, but it is what it is. Emmanuel Forbes, I have to give this just a fine grade. Borderline like it. So this was a ring the bell moment for me because I put out a list of, I think, 10 teams that I said I will be stunned if Emmanuel Forbes is not on one of those teams, because he has to, all caps, has to go to a quarters heavy split safety defense where, with his 166-pound frame, they're not asking him to press a lot. He's playing off, 10 yards off, quarters coverage, reading, the route combination in tandem with the quarterback's eyes, where he can jump the quarterback, jump the pass, use that insane length, the insane first step, the ball skills, basically as an extension of the safety staff, just like he did at Mississippi State, that led to 16 interceptions in his time there. This is one of those fits. They run a lot of quarters. I get what they like in him. So I can't disagree with that, but what I do disagree with is taking him over Christian Gonzalez, taking him over Deonte Banks, and even Joey Porter. I just, again, disagree with the evaluation. I like the scheme fit. I like the player, but I struggle with how I want to grade this between liking it and saying it's just fine. This pick right here is a certified steal. I mean, I don't think I need to spend too much time on this one. Complete freak athlete. Never should have been there at 17 after a couple of questionable picks, to say the least. Like, Detroit. I don't need to go there. I've already trashed Detroit, but I thought for sure when they traded down they were targeting Christian Gonzalez, and then they took a running back and it was like, oh, okay. But Gonzalez, I think, needs to improve some of his press man technique, but really a moldable cornerback prospect, a special talent. Was, I think, my 8th player in this draft. You get him nearly double that down the board. Love this pick for the Patriots. And you get some real superstar talent in there for the Patriots. Then we got Detroit back up at 18. They take Jack Campbell. And I will be nice and give them I've got questions. He was my linebacker 1. It is a need for them. And I see him fitting into that culture. Shout out to whoever said it in the chat, Campbell's Chicken Noodle Soup. You've got a lock lifetime sponsor in the Detroit Lions, because you've got Jack Campbell coached by Coach Campbell. You can see him, right? Being a Ring of Honor type of player that plays 10 years, makes some Pro Bowls, is a good player. It's hard to be too critical of that, but the Pro Bowl thing is because he's going to put up a bunch of tackle numbers, and tackle numbers are the single most overrated stat in all of football, honestly. I don't think he's going to be a game-changing defensive player. He's going to help that run defense. He's going to provide a little bit of range over the middle of the field. I think he's not like a lot of the first-round linebackers that I've been super critical about, where they're raw guys that don't understand the game. That's not Jack Campbell. He's a really smart player. It's just, is he going to have the sideline-to-sideline range? Is he going to be a dynamic coverage player? Is he even going to be a spectacular blitzer? I didn't see any of those things in his tape at Iowa. I think he's a very sound player. I compared him to like C.J. Mosley, like a little bit bigger than C.J. Mosley. But, Mosley's a good player. But, with what he's been over the course of his career, are you passing up the Nolan Smiths of the world, the Deonte Banks of the world, a Zay Flowers that could provide another impact for that receiving game? Like, I don't know, man. Lions fans are already salty about this, but the reality is you had the 18th pick, you had the 6th pick for a team that the whole argument for not taking a quarterback early was the NFC sucks and they can go for it right now. You ended up with a running back that's going to be a incremental upgrade to DeAndre Swift and a linebacker that's going to be an incremental upgrade to Alex Anzalone. I could not disagree with that anymore. Those are the two single least valuable positions in the NFL by far. It's not even close. So I'm just stunned at what the Detroit Lions did, and I would be livid if I was a Lions fan. I just would. And I get you want to, defend Brad Holmes, and he's earned the benefit of the doubt, and I get all that. But I'm going to tell you my opinion, and that's it. I think they completely flunked this draft. Calijah Kancey to the Bucks. Another situation where we'll see what happens with Will Levis. Are they going to end up regretting that? I don't want to dog on that for everybody, but it is in the back of my mind for a lot of these teams. Kancey is a fit. They must not believe in Logan Hall all that much, because I thought when they took him, he was supposed to play this role, but I also thought he was a reach. And that's a reminder that sometimes I do have good analysis and can tell you when teams reached on guys, and I thought Logan Hall was that. I think they're partially admitting that here with Calijah Kancey. And Hall, I'm not writing him off entirely, but we are, a year removed from them basically spending a first-round pick on Logan Hall, and they just took a very similar type of role for their defense. I think that speaks volumes, but Kancey's a really special pass rusher. If you were going to take Calijah Kancey, you had to put him on a team that has a true nose, and the Bucks have that, to say the least, with Vita Vea. So I'm a fan of this pick. I'm going to give it a love it, maybe a like it. It's kind of halfway in between there, but a sound pick. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, I think the way I describe this on stream is how I'm going to stand by it. It's a love it pick for me. A lot of people are going to say this is the steal of the first round and all this stuff. No, I think it's a love it pick. I love the fit. He's going to be super productive. Makes so much sense in the slot with DK Metcalf and Lockett on the outside. But that's the thing with JSN. He is a slot receiver. He is Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jarvis Landry, Julius Edelman. I think he will be looked back in the last 10 years with the best slot receivers that have come through. Cole Beasley, he's much bigger than Cole Beasley, but over the last 3 weeks, I have had to kind of put my foot down and say, no, the JSN hype has gone too far. He's getting a ton of Justin Jefferson comparisons. I will be stunned if he is Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson had 4.42 speed. Jaxon Smith-Njigba had 5.5 or 4.52, and that was like surprisingly fast for him. No one really blinked an eye when Justin Jefferson ran 4.42 because the speed showed on tape for him. Jefferson has a bigger frame. He actually won from the outside in his sophomore year at LSU. Jaxon Smith-Njigba ate up a bunch of open space at Ohio State. I'm really encouraged by his route running that he showed at the Combine, but there's not a whole lot of tape evidence of him routing up cornerbacks one-on-one because it was Wilson, it was Olave drawing the best coverage on the outside, man-to-man, and Smith-Njigba was facing free releases into the middle of the field and it got a lot of easy production. And that's going to be available for him in Seattle with the similar situation. So it's a great fit, and I don't think it's a reach. I had him as a first-round talent right around, the 20th pick in the draft. So for me, this isn't some massive steal. It's just a really great pick for the Seattle Seahawks. But I feel like every time JSN comes up, I have to do a little pump the brakes on him. We're going to keep the love it there with Quentin Johnston, who did end up my number one wide receiver, and I'm really happy to see him go right in this group. You got 4 wide receivers off the board in a row. I didn't even notice that happened on draft day, but there's a lot of conversation about these guys, and there you go, boom, 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 boom. All right, kind of in line with each other. To me, Quentin actually provides a different element than what Mike Williams has, and this is a great destination for him. If there's a criticism on Quentin Johnston, it's that he's not this big ball winner on the outside. Well, guess what? You don't need him to be that. You have that in Mike Williams. You can let Quentin Johnston be what he was at TCU, a separator in the short to intermediate game. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up on the outside with Keenan Allen in the slot and let him be a dynamic player after the catch. He is, to me, going to be an exceptional player against press coverage. He is a really tough player to get up in his face and press him. And he's an underrated route runner. And I think he's in a spot where he could learn a little bit about contested catches and bodying guys up. I think Mike Williams has really come a long way in his time in the NFL and could probably teach a guy like Quentin Johnston a thing or two. So, this team, when they get off the bus and you see Mike Williams and Quentin Johnston and Justin Herbert and even my dude Parham, who maybe is earning himself another chance here. I don't know. I got to give Parham a chance, a shout out. But I love this pick. Then we got the Ravens up, and I'm going to give this a like it. If I want to be clear, if Deonte Banks and Joey Porter weren't there, this would be a love it. But they bring back Lamar Jackson, and to me, they are a top cornerback away from really being ready to go as a real Super Bowl team. I think they are a post-hype sleeper after all the injuries last year. But the one glaring hole on their roster is corner. And the best players on the board were both Banks and Porter, in my opinion. It's not a slight to Zay. Zay's a first-round talent. He's a good pick and all that. But I do think you had Odell, Bateman, Andrews, Likely. You have already put a better situation around Lamar than he's had. So I just want to point that out, that's the direction I would have gone. But overall, Zay is going to be awesome in this offense. They don't have any excuses for Lamar, the new offense. And it's just going to be a much different feeling Ravens team, but I'm glad it's come together. Again, I want to save these love it grades for picks that I'm truly raving about. I would have gone a different direction. I would have gone with Deonte Banks, who I think is a really special player sitting right at home in Maryland. But they decided to go a different route, and I really don't hate it at all. I just can't say that I'm obsessed with that pick. Then the Vikings at 23, similar kind of thought process here. I'm actually going to give this a fine, and another situation where I don't think it's a reflection of Jordan Addison. I see where he fits fully. It's almost very similar to what I said about Tyree Wilson, where he doesn't have to be the alpha. And I just don't think that Jordan Addison is an alpha at his size. But as a number 2, absolutely makes sense. This is much more to me about the 2 cornerbacks that they passed on in Brian Flores' system, where they're going to blitz, they're going to ask these guys to hold up, and they don't have the bodies to do that right now. Banks and Porter, I think, would have really helped that defense that was clearly a huge problem for them last year. But even a little bit deeper, passing on Will Levis here, living in Minnesota, all the Vikings fans want is a path out of purgatory, even if it means a step back for a year. They know, Vikings fans know, and I thought Kwesi and those guys kind of knew, like Kirk Cousins has his limits. Will Levis is sitting there at 23. And you don't have to move up to get him. If the Vikings moved up to like 12 or 13 to get Will Levis, I'd be roaring about it. And they could have had him at 23. So this, of all the teams that passed on Will Levis, I think this is the one that's like really painful. I just don't know, especially because you're taking a receiver that's gonna it's gonna make you be a better team now. It's gonna make Kirk Cousins play better now. Is Jordan Addison going to be the difference in you going all the way and winning a Super Bowl all of a sudden with Kirk Cousins when you don't have a corner to help you on the back end with that defense? I don't think it will be. To me, this is just treading water. And I thought they had an opportunity to really start swimming, and they passed on that opportunity. And some of the Vikings fans I've talked to already are kind of like, all right, I guess, he's going to be fun. He's swaggy. He fits right next with just Justin Jefferson, but I don't know, man. I think you got to question the fear, the cowardice, really, to not risk anything to get a quarterback. Okay, this is a certified steal. for the New York Giants. And I have had them considering corner in the past, but once they took him and I pulled up their depth chart, I was like, wow, we should have been talking. There's all this talk about the Giants needing a wide receiver more than anything, right? Because of how bad that group was last year. But they did a pretty good job with that. Wandale's coming back healthy. They signed Paris. Isaiah Hodgins broke out. They signed Jamison Crowder. Darius Slayton's back. Sterling Shepard's back. Like, they have and they bring in Darren Waller. They have real weapons for Daniel Jones this year. There's no alphas there. There's nothing terribly exciting. But Brian Dable's going to scheme these guys up, and they can function. And you look at the cornerback group, it's like, oh my God, this is horrible. Yeah, they got Adoree Jackson, but beyond that, Darnay Holmes, Aaron Robinson, Cordale Flott, who is a real person. Getting Deonte Banks at 24, who was the number 8 player, I think, number 8 or 9 on my draft board, I think a really special player that can go press man in Wink Martindale's system, but also drop in his zone to jump up and get him. It was a no-brainer for me for the Giants, and this to me was one of the best picks of the night. Then we got the Bills coming up for Dalton Kincaid. I kind of talked myself into it. Dawson Knox really, I think, disappointed them. They gave him the big contract, and his contested catch percentage fell off a cliff. His production dropped. He didn't really take any massive strides. And I think they've been picked apart by Travis Kelce so many times that they look at Dalton Kincaid as a guy that can make things easier for Josh Allen, get rid of that ball a little bit quicker and stay ahead of the chains a little bit better. So I like it. I don't really have any massive reasons to say why I don't love it other than just like, you do have Dawson Knox, who's a decent player, and I thought they had other needs. But I think it's a solid pick, and he's going to be a good player in that offense. All right, Mazi Smith at 26. Where's my bell? Where's my damn bell? Let's go. How many times, Cowboys fans, how many times did I put Mazi Smith to the Cowboys and said, this is the missing piece? I'm not going to say he's a certified steal, but this is an A-plus pick for me. They filled out their needs with Gilmore and Brandon Cooks in free agency. Now they get that run stuffer that they've so desperately needed. This is going to be a premium defense, a premium offense, ready to go. Mazzy, to me, is a locked and loaded run stuffer right away. With pass rushing upside, he's going to be freed up a little bit more now with Parsons and Lawrence and all the guys they have on that D-line. So I'm a huge fan of this pick. Good job, Dallas Cowboys, who to me continue to be a remarkably underrated drafting team. They are consistently one of the best drafting teams in the entire league. Okay, we got 5 more picks. Anton Harrison to the Jags. I think this is just a like it. It makes sense. I'm just, if I could channel my inner Jags fan, I'm just a little bit disappointed that this wasn't Brian Branch, who to me kind of rounded out that defense and was kind of a best player available. Biggest need kind of made a ton of sense, especially moving down to get him. But I'm not going to be overly critical of getting an offensive tackle. Shout out to the YouTube chat. They made it clear to me something I didn't know. Cam Robinson is suspended for 6 games. I don't know how I missed that. But that definitely helps justify this pick a little bit. And maybe Cam Robinson comes back as a guard or comes back in and Walker Little steps in at guard. But, you got Trevor Lawrence trying to get better every year. Let's make sure that offensive line is good. I like the pick. I'm just not going to act like it's some sensational, amazing pick or anything. Because, again, I'm trying to save those for really special picks. Myles Murphy to the Bengals. Another one where I'm like, I hit love it on the stream. We were getting excited. We were going to pop champagne because my wife's a Bengals fan. I think it's still a love it, but it's like an A-, not an A, just because I'm still a little bit wishy-washy on Myles Murphy. But I think given the landing spot, it turns into a love it spot here with a little bit of a, like it, love it, wishy-washiness about it. The only reason I say that is he just wasn't very good last year. He's got the traits. I think he's a hell of a lot better player than like Keion White, for example, who shout out to the NFL for not taking him in the first round, which I thought was insane. Honestly, taking him in the second round to me is still a reach, but he's going to come off the board at some point. He's in Kansas City for the draft. But good job, Cincinnati, not buying into the hype, taking the younger, more explosive player who has better film on tape from his 2021 season. It's a good situation. Since he needed a pass rusher and he's going to have a chance to really be groomed there, you look at Sam Hubbard as their number 2 edge. He's like probably the least exciting number 2 edge starter in the league. He's fine. He's adequate in that spot, but Myles Murphy has legit traits. So I think he's going to turn into a good player there, but there's some risk. He really was not a special player, and it was a little bit of a ring the bell moment to see him fall, fall into the range that I've been kind of mocking him all along. When I had him going, I think 29 to the Saints in January, people are like, "You're insane." And I'm like, I don't know, man. He wasn't very good last year, so he's got to tap back into his physical tools. Bryan Bresee to the Saints. This was a certified steal. I'm a big believer in Bresee, straight up. I had him as a true first-round grade, one of the 22 best players in this draft. But for New Orleans, they needed really him. Like, I think Kancey would have been fine, but I don't know if Kancey's a 3-down starter. I think Bresee can be as a 3 technique. I think Mazzy would have been a good fit for New Orleans as well, but you lose Shai Tuttle, you lose David Onyemata, you lose Marcus Davenport. The last 3 defensive linemen, 2 guys on the interior. That group was going to be horrible next year, and if you're trying to compete, I know Bresee is viewed as a little bit of a project, and I think his best football is maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, but I still think he's going to be an impactful player for New Orleans, and I really believe in the kid to kind of get a clean start in the NFL. Incredibly talented guy. And then we can keep the certified steal up as the Eagles, courtesy of the New York Jets, because they somehow took, I don't know if they put the wrong name on the card or what. Please, somebody explain to me taking Will McDonald over Nolan Smith. Very similar players, but Nolan Smith, the younger, more explosive, better version, in my opinion. So we'll see how that plays out. But not only is my pro comp for Nolan Smith Hassan Reddick, who is eventually going to be aged out in Philadelphia, but you get the guy that was the heart and soul of the Georgia defense now back reunited with Jalen Carter, who needs to keep his head on straight. If nothing else, this is insurance or a Batman to Robin type of situation with Jalen Carter. So, big fan of getting Nolan Smith. Howie Roseman couldn't really have walked, like, he had no more standing to gain. He's already kind of in a tier of his own as the best front office manager in the league. But my God, running circles around the entire NFL at this point. All right, last pick. We're going to be out of here in less than an hour. But Felix Anudike-Uzomah, this to me was just kind of like a fine pick. I really don't have a whole lot of bad things to say about it. I don't have a lot of great things to say about it. I love the hometown fit. I think it's a lot of fun. I think he's going to be an effective player, is kind of a Frank Clark replacement. I really didn't see a first-round player in his game, the explosive traits to potentially be a good starter or even like a high-end starter. I get a lot of edge players fell off the board. It's the 31st pick, so it's more of a second-round pick than it is a first-round pick. Again, I want to really focus on the picks that I get excited about, and this one was just like, all right, it makes sense. It's fine. I don't have a whole lot else to add. Not a whole lot of negative things to say, not a ton of positive things to say. But there you go. There are your grades and analysis for every first round pick. So I'm not going to do this for every day of the draft. The next draft grades will be the individual team grades, where we're going to do them by division after the draft is done. But you can, of course, get my live reaction and analysis by joining me here for the live streams on YouTube. Please do hit that like button on the way out. Appreciate you for watching. Drop your comments down below where you agree, where you disagree. I'm sure it's going to be very civil. Draft grades are always no emotions attached at all. But these are my honest thoughts and reactions. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon for some more live streaming. Peace out.